We have today with us our brother, Mr. Habib Patel. So, inshallah, before we begin the actual session, just wanted to do some introductions to everyone. So, just give me a second. So, today's session will be Standing Strong, Practical Steps to Challenging Islamophobia. Before we begin, inshallah, we're going to start with the recitation of Quran. We always start with the recitation of Allah's word because it is the beginning and it is the end, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Sirat alladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayr al-maghdubi alayhim wa lad-dallin. Ameen. So, welcome everyone to Muslim Council of Britain's The Next Level. It's a webinar series that goes beyond the conversation. Each session is about more than just talking. Here we're unpacking, we're challenging, and we're inspiring action. I mean, at the end of the day, can't just expect each other to talk. We need to come together to come up with some good conversations and some good challenges, and through diverse perspectives, through change makers of our society, inshallah. This is not just a discussion. This is a movement, inshallah. We need to push towards understanding, unity, and meaningful change. This month, we're marking Islamophobia Awareness Month. We're flipping the script. That is the title of our sponsored series of talks that we're having. These figures aren't just numbers that we're hearing. According to government's most recent hate crime stats, anti-Muslim hatred, anti-Muslim hate crimes have risen by 19%, and that is just since March 2025. Nearly half, around about 44%, are religious hate crimes, and they are particularly targeting Muslims. These figures are not just numbers, they represent real people, real communities, real pain. From our mosques being attacked to our rise on Islamophobia attacks to our Muslim women, who obviously are more at target due to their visibility of wearing hijab and traditional dress, etc. This is really worrying. And so today we need to confront this reality together. We'll explore how to move away from awareness to action. A couple of housekeeping rules before we move on. So please type the questions in the Q&A section. Inshallah, we will try to group the questions up. So if there's anything in particular that highlights and we have the time for it, we'll certainly ask our guest speaker in order to address those. This event will be recorded and it will be available on the Muslim Council of Britain's YouTube channel. Tonight's webinar is proudly sponsored by the Muslim Association of Britain. We're supported by MEND and the Islamophobia Response Unit. MAB's work is holistic. They nurture change makers through spiritual, intellectual, moral, and social physical growth rooted in the teachings of Islam, much like the Muslim Council of Britain as well. We're grateful for Muslim Council for sponsoring today and all our other sessions as well. We've got the Muslim Engagement and Development, known as MEND, who work tirelessly to tackle Islamophobia through education, media engagement, and advocacy. And the Islamophobia Response Unit, they're an independent charity and they are dedicated to supporting people affected by Islamophobic incidents. It includes anti-Muslim hate crime, both in England and Wales. These partnerships and support ensure that spaces like this, like today, exist, where we can come together, we can speak truth, we can spark meaningful change and take action on it, inshallah. So the more information is available on these in the comment section. I will be putting down the links, inshallah. We are recording this session, so it will be available. Today we have our brother Habib Patel. Just a quick introduction to him. He is the founder and creative director, of Discover. This is an award-winning brand and digital marketing creative design agency. They have been involved in crafting brand strategies and identities, websites, UX, UI design, marketing campaigns, and experiential design that bring brands to life in a distinctive and meaningful way. With over 20 years of experience, Brother Habib has collaborated with some of the world's most recognized brands. You will see them in your day-to-day lives without even knowing that our brother has assisted with them. These include American Express, Dove, GSK, Lucozade, Sensodyne, Tetra Pak, Mont Blanc, Walkers, Dubai Airports. The list goes on and on, including our local Royal Mail and IBM. A passionate speaker and advocate for strategic and creative design, Brother Habib has led workshops and facilitated collaborative design thinking sessions to help organizations uncover their brand's essence and translate into a powerful, resonant experiences, inshallah. So we are really delighted and very honored to have him today with us. So if I can move on to Brother Habib, who will take charge from here on out.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, Zara. I really appreciate your introduction. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone who's joined as well. I really appreciate you all coming on board. So I'm hoping that we can see this green screen. Yeah, thank you, Zara, for confirming. So we're going to be talking about changing the narrative and tackling Islamophobia online. And we're going to be thinking about this slightly differently from what you may have expected. And let's take you through some important concepts, inshallah, and we're going to come back to some questions at the end, inshallah. So first of all, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We start in the name of Allah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I pray that my words are understood. This presentation today is an extract from a series of presentations and workshops that I am rolling out across the UK and beyond, inshallah. We've done 5 so far this year. We started this year. It's called Brand Muslim. I'll give you the details at the end. Please follow us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok. And I want to say a big thank you, first of all, to Zahra and to Brother Wajid and to all of the people at Muslim Council of Britain for inviting me to do this. Brother Abdullah as well, who isn't here today, but very thankful that I've been invited. A little bit about me, very quickly. You can see this on LinkedIn. My experiences with people like Sachin Sachi, Ogilvy, Coley Porterbell, Interbrand, Landor, working on clients such as American Express, Coca-Cola, Walkers, Visa, etc., the ones that Sister Zara has just mentioned. Let's start our conversation today by talking about brand. This is a natural place for me to start because this is what I do in my work. This is what gets me up in the morning. And I love talking about brand. I love talking about what the power of brand is. So first of all, let's look at a very basic brand principle. A logo is not a brand and a brand is not a logo. It is far more than that. This is how we define what a brand is. There's many definitions out there. There's 1,000,001 definitions out there. This is how we define it. Brand is what your audience perceives you to be through experience. You cannot dictate to your audience how they should process you, how they should perceive you. It is only the experience that they take on board that will dictate what they think about your brand. And when I say brand today, we are living in the most brand literate times of all time. Even children can recognize a sweet brand or a toy brand. So we are living in the most brand literate times of all time. And therefore, it is something that we need to understand. And because we are being branded, whether we know it or not, we are being branded. And also, each one of you has a personal brand. If not, you are part of a business that has a brand, or you are dealing with the brand in your day-to-day work. So every touch point of a brand creates an impression and occupies a space in your audience's minds. Your brand is made up of tiny little molecules, tiny little pieces that make up what your brand is perceived to be, whether it's the social media, the hardware that's part of your business and your brand, the website, new features, employee onboarding, customer service, customer contacts, reporting, blogs, right the way down to how you pick up the phone and greet somebody when when they phone into you. So if you are part of a brand, if you're creating your own brand, if you are starting up a business, be conscious of everything that you do. Every little touch point matters. Every piece matters. So whether you're an organization or an individual, you need to tell your story, or your audience will fill the story in for themselves. In a vacuum, the brand is created in the perceiver's mind. So you have got to make sure that you narrate your own story, that you own your own story. Again, whether you're an individual, whether you're an organization, whether you're a charity, whether you're an NGO, it really doesn't matter. You've got to own your story, or else others will own it for you. And I'm using the words social media as a proxy for online. Social media is part of your brand. We live in an age where social media has more power than mainstream broadcast media. So therefore, the social media brand, your brand, whether you're an individual or an organization, the social media part of your brand is important, and it is part of your brand. So let's talk a little bit about our story as Muslims. So as Sister Zara said, the statistics on Islamophobia are frightening, and this is Islamophobia Awareness Month. I would suggest to you look up the figures and the stats and the data on Islamophobia, not just in this country, but the world over. Everywhere you look, whether we're talking about the UK or France or Europe or America or China or India or, of course, Palestine, Islamophobia is rife. It is growing, and it is being legitimized by those who should be leading us and who should be advocating for us. So let's talk a little bit about our story first. Let's set the context. So our narrative on this day, and I'm sure we all recognize what this day is, and the people who are too young, this is September the 11th, 2001. On this day, it became permissible to impose a narrative on us. So whether we acknowledge that or not, whether we're in denial or not, this is true. I mean, it was up to that point anyway, but it accelerated from this point on. And for the last 20 odd years, 23, 24 years, this narrative has been imposed on us, and it's been permissible to do that. It has been those who are doing that, imposing, they are given permission to do that. So our narrative, on that day, we became one block, monolithic, evil, savage, the backward people. And I think that, again, this is something that we need to acknowledge in mainstream media, in the world over, even in Muslim countries. Would you believe we started to become the evil, savage, backward guys? And what we've got to acknowledge is that through that narrative, we have been dehumanized, demonized, and demoralized. So the first two are what has been done to us, and the last one is what we are feeling, what we are going through as a result of this narrative, this constant narrative that has been told about us, not by us, but by others. So since that day, we have been on the defensive. We have not felt the confidence to tell our own stories. We have been told again, time and again, what our stories are and what's evil about us, and it is hard to be on the defensive all the time. And our narrative has been owned by others, but the question today that I'm posing is, can we reclaim it? And I believe we can reclaim it. It is going to be hard work, and it's going to have to be done in a way that is unexpected, and I'm going to go through that in a little while, but it can be done. We can reclaim our narrative. Our narrative, we need to get on the front foot for our narrative. Up till now, we've been on the defensive. So being on the front foot means that we have to own our narrative, our story as Muslims. So let's see how we can do that. So we need to fight the dehumanization. And make no mistake, we have been dehumanized. the statistics are really crazy, but in the British media, I don't have the statistics with me, but in the British media alone, just newspapers alone, the number of dehumanizing stories that have been told about us, there are very few stories that have been told about us that are positive, that are about our faith and how it is a positive contribution to British society. So overall, the stories being told about us are dehumanizing, and they are knowingly dehumanizing. So our narrative, we need to tell our stories on our terms with care, passion, and craft. We need to get back on the front foot and start telling our stories. And I want to kind of take you through why that is going to be a positive for us and why we no longer need to play the the game of the people who are trying to dehumanize us. We can own our own stories. We can play our own games. We can play with our own strategies and our own tactics, rather than trying to play catch up and always being on the defensive. So our narrative can be ours again. So let's approach the problem from a slightly different angle. Let's understand what is happening out there. So owning our story. Let's talk a little about owning our story. What do we mean by that? What does that mean? How do we do it? How do we apply it? So differentiation gives your audience the reason to choose you. So a lot of the times we get told sometimes that what makes us different is a bad thing, but actually it's not. In the brand world, we value and cherish and make precious what is differentiated about a brand, what makes it unique, what makes it stand out from the rest. And as Muslims, in our belief, and as individuals and as organizations, we have things that make us differentiated and makes us different. And that is to be cherished. That's actually to be celebrated. Different is a strength, not a weakness. So just understand what we mean by that. Difference is strength, not a weakness. If you think about the best brands in the world, and I'm going to take you through some really good brands in a little while, they celebrate their difference. In fact, they want to be different. They're trying to work out what is different about us. How can we leverage it? How can we tell our story through this difference? So that's what the best brands in the world do. And I'm saying to you guys, whether you're individuals, organizations, whether you're talking about Muslims in general, whether you're talking about, an individual organization, I'm saying seek your difference and celebrate it. Seek your difference, celebrate it. It is a strength, not a weakness. Let's talk a little bit about some semi-technical terms. So brand proposition. What is a brand proposition? A brand proposition is a singular, compelling statement which captures your brand. And again, I'll present some examples in a little while, so hopefully it kind of makes sense. So singular, compelling statement which captures your brand. Think about that if you are an individual and you're trying to build your profile. Think about that if you represent an organization. It doesn't really matter which angle you're coming from. Really, it's about this singular, compelling statement which captures your brand. Now, the thing is, when you see one, it looks really easy, whether it's a tagline or a brand proposition that works internally in an organization. It feels really, really simple. And you kind of go, wait, great, man, I can do one of those. But actually, there's a lot of hard work that goes behind it to kind of create, whether it's a tagline or a brand proposition. So storytelling, defining your values and your proposition is not the fluffy stuff. This is another mistake that we make, to think of marketing, branding, storytelling as the fluffy stuff, as the superficial stuff, as a nice to have. Actually, that's not the case. Your values, your storytelling techniques and your methods and strategies are really important. They mean something, they have value, and they create value for your organization or for yourself. So telling our story, how do we tell our story? We come from a tradition. This is really important to understand. We come from a tradition of storytellers, of orators and narrators. And just stop there for a second and think about that. Think about all the narrators and storytellers in our tradition as Muslims. And if you go back into history and look at the present modern world, there's a whole load of storytellers, and they all come from the tradition of Islam. They all come from the tradition of telling stories in Islam. The Quran is full of stories. The Hadith are full of stories, narrations. So this is in our DNA. This is in our tradition, in our heritage. It's not something new. We can leverage this. We can own this. So we come from the tradition that has Rumi and Malcolm X. So Rumi, an incredible poet, incredible storyteller, not just of his time. His work has, spanned the decades in terms of popularity. And Malcolm X is someone who's influenced me really, a lot. He is someone who not only told stories of his people, he told stories of the times, and they're universal stories of prejudice, of racism, of hate, of power, of how power works, and so on. One of the books that I return to again and again is Malcolm X Speaks. I thoroughly recommend it. Please seek it out, buy a copy, and read it over and over again, because his speeches are incredible. And if you don't want to read the book, go onto YouTube and listen to his speeches, especially the ones at the Audubon in New York. Ghassan Kanafani, incredible storyteller, Palestinian activist from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He told the stories of Palestine, and he owned those stories, and he told them unapologetically, very much like Malcolm X. I had Tamimi, the young girl who punched the Israeli soldier. She may not be narrating a story, but she is telling a story through her actions. She is claiming a territory through her actions, and I believe she is still imprisoned in those Israeli prisons. So both of these are Palestinian storytellers, and they tell these stories they told these stories in a really, really powerful way, unapologetically, uncompromisingly. Bisan Auda and Hussam Somlot, two more Palestinians. So Bisan Auda is a journalist, and she starts her broadcast for Al Jazeera, or her broadcasts online, with the words, "This is Bisan from Gaza, and I am still alive." She understands exactly what she's doing with that phrase. It's a powerful piece of storytelling, a device that she uses on every broadcast. What she's trying to do straight away is not just introduce herself. She's trying to tell you that being alive in Gaza is something that is under threat constantly, consistently, every minute of every day. And Hussam Zomlot has taken on the mantle of talking to the Western world about Palestine, again, unapologetically, consistently. He has batted away the very questions that we know are meant to corner someone like Hussam Zomlot. He has batted them away and returned to the question of Palestinian rights again and again and again. Even the buildings in our traditions are telling a story. The Blue Mosque in Istanbul, or the Suleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul, or the mosque at Education City in Qatar, they're telling stories. The architecture in our tradition, these are storytelling devices. What is the Blue Mosque telling us? The Blue Mosque is telling us all about the history of Turkey, all about the history of Islam in Turkey, all about the grandeur achieved through mathematical, scientific, architectural, engineering feats. This is a storytelling device. And it's the same with the Education City Mosque in Qatar, in Doha. It is a piece of storytelling about how modern Islam is, as well as how modern Muslims are. And beyond that, it is claiming a territory that we are rooted in the past, but we are constantly reevaluating how that past works for us. Lipanessa and Zahid Mahmood and Arfa Farouk. Well, I'll start with Arfa Farouk and Zahid Mahmood. They are the founders behind the Muslim Tech Fest. And if you haven't been, they've been running for the last 2 years in London, San Francisco, and I'm sure in 2026 is going to be all over the place, all over the globe. But those two founders understood that we need to tell our stories and that we need to talk about technology. There's so many Muslims in technology, as there are in other walks of life. Well, we need to get together, organize, talk to each other, organize what we want to do in the future, organize how we use technology for good. That's what Muslim Tech Fest is all about. And Lipanessa, if you have not been introduced to Lipanessa on LinkedIn or Instagram, she was a footballer and probably still is. So forgive me, Lepe, if you're on this webinar for not learning what you're doing at the moment. But I do know that she's a coach, an incredible speaker about how women in sports are paving the way for how sports can represent communities. And Libanese is an incredible representative for us, incredible athletes, and also an incredible storyteller. Just through her actions, just through what she does every day, she still coaches. So if that is the tradition that we are from, if that is what we have in our DNA, if that is what is in our tradition and in our heritage, what are we afraid of? Why can we not tell our stories? So let's learn from some of the best brands out there, both Muslim and non-Muslim. Let's learn some about these key areas of how brands work, and let's see how we can apply them in our daily lives, but also how we can apply these learnings in how we create our brands and how we tell our stories. So first of all, let's look at these brands and their stories. Let's look at a brand such as Lush. So Lush is, for me, one of the best brands out there, one of the best pound for pound brands out there. Incredible brand. Incredible brand. They are so intentional in everything that they do. So Lush was set up by founders who were ex-Body Shop. And I believe that they were first set up in Bournemouth. And they have this tagline, which is fresh handmade cosmetics. That's how they classify their offer. Fresh handmade cosmetics. Think about how intentional that is. The word fresh, the word handmade, the word cosmetics, it's all very, very intentional. Very carefully chosen words, really carefully chosen words. Look at how their shops behave and work. So if you've ever been to a Lush or ever been past a Lush, you can smell a Lush shop like 3-4 shops down. And by the time you get there, it is overpowering. That's very intentional. It's not an accident. It's not meant to attract the people who wouldn't like that. It's meant to attract the people who would like that. If you look at their products in this shop, they are brightly colored, vivid, vibrant. I'm not the target audience, but it's an incredibly powerful brand. If you look at this, when I was dragged into Lush for the first time, it was this kind of barrage of color, vibrant primary colors on a background of black. Again, very, very intentional. Why the black? So that it pops out the color. The audience that they are looking out for, they want them to notice the color, and they know that the audience loves color. And if you go into a shop, it is full of humor, full of vibrancy, full of this idea that they are artisanal and they're a marketplace. The humor comes through in phrases like the art of bathing, let's get ready to crumble. So those are bath bombs. Their products are out on show so that you touch them. Again, I'm not the target audience, but for the people who love this brand, this is just, it's nectar. Shout out to the people, the way that they name their products as well. Snow Fairy, Hair Custard, Curly Whirly. This is all very, very intentional. And intentionality is part of our brand, right? So we as Muslims, intentionality, the niyyah, is really, really important. So think about learning from these incredible brands. This is a brand that far outperforms, pound for pound, the best beauty brands in the world. They are not Kiehl's or L'Oreal, who are white coats and really clinical. They are a tactile brand, an engaging brand, an open brand. Even their shop is open. The big doorway is intentional as well. It's inviting you in. It's, it's welcoming you. So they're a brand that are all about being fun, engaging, and playful. Those are their values, and that's their personality as well. And their proposition, I talked about proposition earlier on. What's their brand proposition? Well, they call themselves internally the delicatessen of the beauty world. They believe that the product should feel like they're good enough to eat, that they're made with natural stuff. And beyond that, they have been lauded for being on the right side of history, inshallah. So they are very vocal about Palestine. They have presented products which are pro-Palestinian, and the profits go back towards causes that support Palestine. And also, they closed their shop for one day. They know that it was a small, maybe even futile gesture, but actually they did that in order to get the story of Palestine out there in a stronger way. So let's talk about Zeteo. Zeteo, I've got my Zeteo t-shirt on. Here it is, my hoodie. Zeteo is a news organization, a storytelling organization, a media organization run by Mehdi Hassan. Mehdi Hassan, if you don't know Mehdi Hassan already, is an incredible storyteller. And I believe he's the best in the world at this moment in time. And he's Muslim. He's British Muslim. So he set this up around a year and a half ago, maybe a little longer. You can see him here with Owen Jones and Bassem Youssef and AOC. And this hoodie that I'm wearing, actually, it tells a brilliant story. So what does Zeteo mean? Zeteo, it tells you how it's pronounced, but also it means to seek in order to find, to inquire into, and it is a new media company. And you can see the kind of characters that he's getting into telling the stories that he wants to tell on his media network. So Cynthia Nixon, Prem Tucker, he is a Muslim, but it's not a Muslim business. That's fine though, but he is using his values to tell stories. So he's curious, and Zeteo is a curious organization, inquisitive organization, equitable, fair, independent media. Why is it even here? Well, it's there because the alternative is biased, whether it's the BBC, MSNBC, CNN, whoever they are, they're biased and they're not telling the whole story. So this is scratching an itch that is out there. So they're all about truth and integrity. Washing Machine Project. I'm going to zip through these because there's some really important bits at the end that I'd like to kind of take you guys through. Washing Machine Projects is a project that is led by Navjot Soni. Navjot Soni is an engineer, is a Sikh gentleman who understood while he was trying to look for a job that a lot of the world is unable to afford washing machines, and women are a big part of that story. And he met a lady called Divya while he was traveling India, and she was washing for about 4 or 5 hours a day, and he wanted to solve that. So he's built this hand-cranked, dynamo-powered washing machine, which he is distributing all over the world. And this is a really interesting case study because the way he tells his story, the reason I wanted to include him is that he's telling his story relentlessly. If you go onto LinkedIn and Instagram and so on, he's telling the story of people like Sylvie and Florence on the left-hand side, and he's telling his own story, how he was raised by women, raised by a single mum and 2 older sisters, and links that story, his personal story, to the Washing Machine Project. So he tells his story through his journey, his family, the Washing Machine Project journey, the challenges, the barriers, the successes, the effect, the joy. And I really recommend that you follow him and understand how he is working. He's a relentless storyteller. One post minimum a day across all his platforms. Uncivilized is a brand, is a media brand, again, a new independent media brand led by Salem Barahmeh. And he creates these films, these little gems, these 15-minute films, these 30-minute films, these hour-long films. He's a Palestinian, But his storytelling is absolutely beautiful. And I urge you just to look up Uncivilized Media on YouTube, subscribe, watch one of his films, and you'll understand how powerful they are, how beautifully created they are, but how succinct and how to the point they are. Incredible storytelling talent. And last but not least, let's look at Zoran. We all know this brand, incredible storytelling. The success behind this campaign was all about storytelling. His core message was, his core proposition was Zoran for an affordable New York City. And no matter how much distraction happened around his campaign, the negative distraction, he always returned to that message, always returned to free buses, freezing the rent, childcare for all, again and again and again. No matter what you think about him as a Muslim, no matter what you think about him as a politician, and I'm sure his record will speak once he gets into power, this campaign, it upended. This is what I mean by owning the narrative. He owned his own narrative. His campaign owned the narrative, and it was totally New York City as well. And he left his opponents in the dust. Oh, not last but not least, Bisan Auda. We mentioned Bisan earlier. She is an incredible journalist, and again, I urge you to watch her content. The way that she has conducted herself right the way through this genocide, and even before that, has been incredible. And she is a storyteller, and we should learn from her storytelling. So let's talk a little bit about brand strategy. Zahra, I know I'm running a little bit over, so I'm just going to be really quick about this. Brand strategy, be intentional. Be intentional about your storytelling. Try things out, but be intentional. Differentiation is a good thing. It is on your side. Work out what's different about you and celebrate it and give your audience a reason to choose you. Brand values. Stories are driven by values. What are your values? And by the way, we have 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can draw upon to draw the values that are important to us. We have a whole book called the Quran and a whole set of narrations called the Hadith that we can draw from. What appeals to you? Is it generosity? Is it mercy? Is it empathy? What is it that you want to draw from Islam, and how can you put it into your story? Brand personality is the qualities and characteristics of your brand. So what's the quality of your brand? What are the description words, the adjectives that you want to apply to your brand? Brand proposition, the singular compelling statement which captures your brand. What is it? You have to work at this. It doesn't come easily. And purpose, the reason your brand exists. What is the reason your brand exists? Work that out. Mission, what do you want to achieve through your brand? Let's talk a little bit about Muslims, and then I'm going to stop because I know there's a question portion to the session as well. We are Muslims. As an audience, we are 2 billion people. We are a fifth of the world's population. At a conservative estimate, we are a fifth of the world's population. So we've got a ready audience. If we get our stuff together, we can tell a great story. We can organize ourselves, and we can use that as a power, as a superpower. We are monotheistic, but we are not a monolithic culture. These are all Muslims from all over the world. We are scouts, we are protesters, we are halakas, we are young, we are old, we are in France, we are in Mauritania, we are in Congo, we are in Turkey, we are all over the world. And we are not monolithic, but we are monotheistic. And we can draw from what unites us a lot easier than what divides us. So if you're a Muslim brand, tell your brand story. Let's go back to tackling Islamophobia. Let's talk about tackling Islamophobia online. I'm saying the best way to tackle Islamophobia online is not to get into the weeds of the comments, not to try to fight back against negativity online. I actually say own your story and tell your story. So as a Muslim brand, tell your brand story. You have a duty now more than ever to tell your brand story. We are living in an age where we have been and are being defamed, dehumanized, and demonized. Why get into the small stuff? Look at the big picture. Others are telling our story for us. We should be telling our story. We should be owning our narrative. So we need to take our narrative again and make sure we keep hold of it. We are the descendants of incredible generations. We belong to a belief system that gave the world algebra, right way to spell it, the architecture of Istanbul and Isfahan, the poetry of Rumi, the skilled debating of Malcolm X, the compelling journalism of Bisan Auda. We are believers, so believe. Believe. You should believe in your business idea or your brand or your personal profile the most out of any other human being. No other human being should believe in your business idea more than you, is what we say to our clients. So I'm saying to you, you believe in what you're doing and tell your story proudly. Replace the negativity with your positive story. Your story you so own your narrative, conceptualize and craft your story, incorporate your values, your Islamic values in your tone of voice to your audience. Let the Islam in your brand shine through. Let the Islam in your brand shine through. Don't hide it away. Don't say, "Oh, we're not a Muslim brand." No, it's okay. You can say you're not a Muslim brand, but you can even say you're not a Muslim business. But let the values that you hold dear for your faith, let them shine through. That the Islam in your brand shine through. I just wanted to reiterate that. There are so many things there's so many qualities within our faith that we attach ourselves to. What I attach myself to in my faith is different to what you attach yourself to in your faith. But whatever it is, whatever you hold dear from Islam, let that shine through. Tell your story. Don't be afraid to tell your story. This is the time. This is a time in history where we need to tell our story. Just before I sign off, again, I want to thank Muslim Council of Britain. I want to encourage all of us to make spaces for ourselves, and we run workshops. We run these presentations and workshops. Look out for them on LinkedIn, on Instagram. These are our handles. Please follow us. Please help us to get this message out to others and join in on a workshop. It will teach you practical skills on how to tell your story. And I thank you very much. Jazakallah khair.
That was absolutely amazing. I feel as though I don't know about anybody else, but I feel as though I need to go in and start rebranding everything. So, which is always a good thing because it means it's inspiring. Couple of questions. So please do use the Q&A portion or the chat portion in order to submit any questions that you have. We can ask Brother Habib. We have him for a few minutes more. So one of the questions is, so often Muslim organizations, we're quite scrutinized for being Muslim, basically, right? And although our target audience might be our own community and Muslims, it's not that we are living in a society that's predominantly not Muslim. So we're a minority majority in the great in a majority. So in those circumstances, how important is it, and how would we like balance our brand to of being Muslim and yet being inclusive?
Right. So just reiterate that last bit again, please, Zara.
So how would we in those circumstances in which we're obviously a Muslim organization or a Muslim brand, for example, and
Yeah.
the target audience is more Muslim, but we are living in a society that's,
Mhm.
we're predominantly not Muslim, and we will be scrutinized for it.
Yeah.
How can we balance that, and how can we be more inclusive, so
Yeah.
that it attracts our core values?
So, thank you. Well, values is where we start from. So,
Okay.
actually, if you think about it, our values as Muslims, whatever those values are, think about any value that we hold dear as Muslims, whether it's empathy, mercy, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, right? Mercy, beneficence, right? Strength, whatever it is. These are pretty universal values. That there is a universality to Islam and what we believe in as Muslims that we shouldn't be uh, we shouldn't be diminishing at all. We should be celebrating these values and what makes us Muslim. So let me take for instance, if I look on LinkedIn any given day, there is something about empathy being posted. There is something about being empathetic, being sympathetic, being caring, being whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's Instagram. I mean, being empathetic, that is a core Muslim value. Let's take Zakat, for instance, this is a core Muslim pillar. And zakat, so this is what I mean by telling positive Muslim stories, right? So pound for pound, person for person, we give more zakat, we give more to charity than any other part of the British population. So, but how often do those stories get out? And of course, we give more during Ramadan, and it is a core part of Ramadan to give to charity. So, how often do others tell that story of us? Well, they're probably never going to. Or very seldom will they. So we've got to tell that story. We've got to tell people why is it that zakat is important? What is zakat? Why is it important? I love national waqf, national waqf, or just waqf in general. The waqf concept is so core to what we are as Muslims. This idea of building infrastructure and giving it for the sake of Allah and in the ownership of Allah. So therefore, it can never be gained from by it can never be profited from, but it can be gained from by Muslims and non-Muslims alike. So we hold universal values. Our faith is rooted in universal values. Who doesn't want to be who doesn't value empathetic as a good quality, empathy as a good quality? Who doesn't value charity as a good thing? So those are just two examples. I hope that answers the questions I've from the questioner.
You have answered a couple of the questions that have come in, so it's all at once. So it was nice and holistic in that respect. I have a question coming in. How do you influence public sector organizations you work in to present Muslims in the community more positively in the current political environment that we are currently in?
So this is a really good question. So let me give you an example of an experience that I had. So I was invited onto a panel for the Muslim Sports Foundation, believe it's called, or is it Federation? I can't remember, and I have big forgiveness for that. But basically, I was on a panel, and it was all about Muslim children and how they can be involved in sport more. And let's face it, we aren't in the higher echelons of sport, and there's a reason for that. There's a core reason for that. So I asked the audience, who are full of sports organizers and managers and directors from Sport England, from the FA, from the English Cricket Board, and so on. I asked them a question: how many of you know what Muslim children do after school? How their routine works after school? None of them put their hand up, because then I informed them that after secular school, they go to religious school for at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, maybe even 2 hours and a half, right? After school, they go to another school and they learn more lessons. And then they come home and do their homework. Then they have their dinner, or the other way around. And that's for every weekday, and maybe sometimes even Saturdays, and maybe even sometimes Sundays, depending on what level they're taking their learning to. How many of you know that? I asked, and none of them knew that. So how can they, and they should be knowing that. They should be proactively reaching out and learning that about our community. But we should be actually reaching out and then telling them about this is what happens to our community. And this stems from this idea that we've got to keep our heads low. We shouldn't be telling our stories. And what I'm saying is, no, tell the stories. We should be telling Sport England and ECB and the FA that this is how we live our lives. How can you accommodate us and make us a part of look at the potential that they're losing out on. There's so many incredible footballers that I know that I grew up with, that never, got to, a league team. There's so many incredible cricketers that I know. That's just me. That's just from my generation. What about now? So that's just an example. We've got to tell our stories. I return back to that core theme, the big picture. Tell our stories. It's about time. Now's the time to do it.
Jazakallah khair. We've got a question. Any suggestions for books or podcasts we can listen to that we can apply, Islam in a practical way and through branding?
Yeah, there's too many. I listen to podcasts all the time. I read books all the time. Look, Zeteo provides great content. Novara Media, these Double Down News, all of these are great independent sources of news media. And then there's books. I mentioned Malcolm X Speaks. That's one of my favorite books of all time because it word for word verbatim, records the words of Malcolm X. There's all kinds of incredible books. Gaston Kanafani was an author as well. I forget his name. The incredible author from, oh god, he's an academic. I forget his name. Edward Said.
It like,
Incredible books. What I would say is, from a brand perspective, there are some really key books. So I worked at a company called Ogilvy, and Ogilvy, there's a book called Ogilvy on Brand that is a seminal piece of work. And there's another piece of work, I think it's called On Brand by Michael Wolff. That's a good book as well. But I would say, look, you know, Mehdi Hasan is a great source. Watch his videos. Watch his videos. He debated a panel. The 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 Oxford Union. The debate was, Islam is a religion of peace, and the opposites was, Islam is not a religion of peace. And just watch how he tells the story. Yes, he diminishes the opposition, but think about the speed at which he is telling his story. Think about how he's getting his points out. Think about how his narrative comes out, and also just how he celebrates Islam and Muslim culture.
Jazakallah khair for your time. I think we'll wrap up for today. There are a couple of questions, but they're mostly on countering Western Islamophobic narratives, or people leaving the UK. Like, how could we be more proactive? If you have any final words to make about it, then
Actually,
please do
Zara,
before I wrap up.
if you don't mind, Zara, I've actually noticed a question. So, Reform and Farage, some Muslims and others are actively talking about leaving UK over the next 3 or 4 years. What is your feeling to deal with this? Should we just show us as Muslims our brand and values, or be or more proactive, take more proactive action? I think that's from Saqib Ali. So, in order to kind of answer your question, Brother Saqib, look, Islamophobia is now worldwide. It's a worldwide phenomenon. It has been fermented. It will be everywhere we go. It will be everywhere we go. Of course, in countries where Islam is more dominant, there's going to be less of it there, but it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be everywhere. Now, what I say is, recognize the people who are trying to divide us for what they are. They're con men. They're con people, right? We can tell a better story than they can. They're telling everyone that these guys are the problem. These guys are the problem, and if I was in power, I would solve that. But actually, they're telling a very shallow, hollow story, and it will get tired. But only if we take the narrative, if we own the narrative, if we get ourselves on the front foot and start telling our stories on our terms. So I'm not saying that's the whole answer. I'm saying that's part of the answer.
Awesome, awesome. Jazakallah khair for your time, and Jazakallah khair for wrapping up today's session. We do have, so in continuation, we still have a couple more days, and we have our last session will be inshallah next week. In the meantime, I'm just going to share the screen. Sorry, give me a minute. There we go. So, inshallah, we've got, please join. So, as part of the Muslim Council of Britain, we've got a WhatsApp channel that essentially gives up any other updates, links to other events or webinars that we do, a series that we do, and even updates on our current programs, what's going on with Muslim Council of Britain, any responses that we have to current news. It's essentially a WhatsApp channel for the whole of the Muslim community in Britain. So, please do join the WhatsApp channel. The QR code is on your screen. And also, there's Be a Friend of our Muslim Council of Britain. So you can join it if you're a part of an organization. You can be an affiliate of Muslim Council of Britain, be a friend, and essentially you'll get updates on what we do. And you can also partner up with us for different events. inshallah. So next week we have Corridors of Power, Tackling Islamophobia Through Policy and Representation. Inshallah, Brother Ali Malani will be running that. He's public relations and communications. That also will be an amazing session. We've had absolutely amazing speakers so far, and that will be another amazing session, inshallah. I'll be wrapping up for today. And as we start with the name of Allah, we also finish with the name of Allah, because any setting that doesn't have the name of Allah mentioned is indeed poor. So Jazakallah khair for all of the attendees today for our webinar, and Jazakallah khair for Brother Habib Patel. It was an amazing session. And thank you for your time and for your expertise. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.